Akira Toriyama is without a doubt one of the most influential Japanese manga artists in the world, creating Dragon Ball and plenty of other IPs that people have come to resonate with, and his unfortunate passing in the year of 2024 has had such a major impact in the world. And with the release of the new Dragon Ball game, no doubt there has been a skyrocket of sales to allow his continued legacy to move forward. While I may not be a big Dragon Ball fan like friends and ex-friends alike, I know that Dragon Ball, even when he was around, had its faults, but as with any well-established series, even its faults can still lead to a greater success. Now, that being said, I have a couple of things to talk about with the new Dragon Ball fighting game that has released not that long ago to everyone in the public. I believe there was a early access if you pre-ordered the game, and there are some things that I want to comment on, at least going by what Mr. Machiavelli had mentioned to me on both Stream Chat and Discord. So, quite a while ago, I made a video talking about how the game was not going to have local multiplayer, which in a Dragon Ball game is an absolute sin. An even more atrocious sin is having a half-ass multiplayer mode, which is something that both Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 and 2 have both had. Now, before I continue this little rant of mine, or loud and wrong complaining tangent, whatever the fuck you want to call it, I'm not here to say that the game sucks because of the lack of such things. I'm just expressing fine self and making people aware of it while putting my own spin in it. And I do believe that if something as good as Dragon Ball does something that most other games wouldn't be able to get away with, but yet does, I gotta call out on it. Just because it has a boatload of sales and made buckets of money, it does not make it immune to the thing that I'm going to be complaining about. So before you leave your usual comments saying that I'm just being a pessimistic asshole like of a certain Bandai Namco published video game, know your place, and I know you damn well going to criticize things about this game too. Just don't be a fucking hypocrite. And even replaying Xenoverse 2, it really makes me think that why can't there be other action games that have this type of formula? And no, I'm not counting Elden Ring. Fuck you. Make both the players and enemies high octane. Then we'll talk. That outdated Sigma mindset has got to go. Wait. It appears that in response to the lack of local multiplayer, the devs actually did incorporate it, but in a way that makes Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 look even worse. You see, when Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 was implemented to the world, it was a phenomenal Dragon Ball title, albeit with just having an excuse to replay the Dragon Ball story scenarios while playing as Ace, the future warrior, albeit at least in the game you can make him whatever race you want or whatever, or make it into a her or whatever. Oh, I'm sorry. Type 1 and Type 2 body types. Can't forget about that. Except the Frieza race and Namekian race are Type 1 only, so when are we going to get Type 2 Namekians and Frieza races? The only stage you can play on in the local 2-player mode was the World Tournament stage, which doesn't even adhere by the rules from games like Budokai, which ironically made it one of the least interesting stages to play, even if it is more in line of how it worked in the show, where if you stepped out of the boundaries, you would end up losing. And even the Budokai games themselves essentially play like Dead or Alive, but with the awesome beam struggling, the transformations, the capsule customization, and all the other fun stuff that makes Dragon Ball Budokai a lot more accessible compared to Budokai Tenkaichi. While Xenoverse wasn't the most perfect local multiplayer game, it definitely had a main reason to play it even in single player. The most that you really got out of online, besides the exclusivity crap and the fear of missing out content, which is another can of worms entirely, even though the grinding was a bit of a drag, you can still get enjoyment out of the game in the single player. You don't get that in Sparking Zero. And what's more unfortunate is that the developers basically made the game more focused on online play, which also requires you to go through the story mode to unlock characters. Now, I haven't played the game myself, so I guess this means I can't say anything negative about it, but praising it is a-okay. I don't know if you have to go through all optional paths to go through the story, or if it's just cohesive and just letting you go through the game's story to unlock the characters as you go along. I'm not 100% certain, but what I do know is that going by why people love Budokai Tenkaichi 1, 2, and 3 is that they all had rich-filled single-player content, and despite the Wii version of Budokai Tenkaichi 3 having online play, you could still get mileage out of those games compared to most Dragon Ball games today. Hell, even something like Battle of Z is basically a game that has all the offline single-player content you can give, with the only form of online multiplayer is some really weird battle mode, and unless you're playing the Vita version, and even if it does work, you're just kind of fucked. There is unironically no good balance for a modern-day anime game, not just Anime Fighter, but just anime game that's all about the fighting, that you can just enjoy it in both a offline department against the computer, having a decent amount of stages and battlegrounds to pick in the local versus mode, and having a moderately acceptable online game where the netcode isn't complete booty cheeks. Now, there is a video that Machiavelli did link me on the Discord, and I did watch it, and here it is in case you're wondering. It's actually pretty good, especially since it actually does come from an indie developer who seems to know what they're talking about, which is pretty good. And before misgender, I really don't give a fuck. Don't take it the wrong way, it's just people retarded. The video that he made actually put in some insight and might have a much more deep analysis as to why Sparking Zero doesn't have a much more fleshed out multiplayer, which just makes it seem like they just pulled pages from Dragon Ball Xenoverse 1 specifically, because at least in Xenoverse 2, you at least get to play on 8 other stages, and you can't even change the time limit, which I guess 3 minutes is kind of okay for a single player one-on-one bout, but even if you're doing a 2-on-2 or 3-on-3, 3 minutes is just not enough to clean up the competition unless you're using some crazy-ass one-shot build. It's fucking stupid. You can't even spectate either, which is dumb, considering that you can literally spectate when you're down in that game, so what the fuck? And it also makes no sense too, since there's literally battles that can last as long as 15 minutes, and yet there's no simple option to have actual time limits or just turn off the damn thing so you can actually enjoy the fucking limited but still seemingly functional local multiplayer. In Xenoverse 2, you don't get that in Sparking Zero. Even with Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 having a boatload of updates, making the game a lot more accessible without taking away the core gameplay that's been established since 2016, I think it's safe to say that while I'm not going to compare Xenoverse 2 to Sparking Zero because they're both different games, if anything, Sparking Zero is more in line with Budokai Tenkaichi. Sparking is the Japanese name for the Budokai Tenkaichi games. They actually put content in single player and it actually carried it for the most part. Even if you're just playing the game fresh and new, like not having all the characters, you could still pick whatever stage you want and just enjoy the game. Did David Jaffe make this game? This game not having decent local multiplayer and not having a decent healthy diet of single player content is just a crime. I wonder how these people who say don't pre-order games, guys, and yet they pre-order this game, and even after saying that the game just doesn't have enough content to justify a $70 price tag, what is their excuse? The game is fun, the online netcode is good, we actually have a good Dragon Ball game that isn't Xenoverse 2, I'd love to hear it. But maybe time will tell if they actually fix this shit, or if we have to wait for updates to get an actual roster that isn't just whatever the hell this is. I think I'm gonna go play the real Budokai Tenkaichi 4, which is made by fans, mind you. Spanish fans, but fans nonetheless.
See ya!